Hi, I'm TJ Campbell. I'm the Tire Information and Testing Manager at the Tire Rack, and this is TJ Talking. This is where we have the opportunity to talk to industry experts about tires. Today we have Will Robbins from Bridgestone North America. Will is a regular guest on the show, and we're always happy to talk to him. So Will, why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Thanks, TJ. Yeah, my name's Will Robbins. I'm the Director of Consumer Product Strategy here at Bridgestone Americas. So my team is the team that looks at the industry and works with our retail partners like Tire Rack to understand exactly what products we need and what sizes to make sure that you guys get what you need.
Sure, understood. And products that we need, that the market desperately needed, Bridgestone Potenza RE-71RS. When Potenza RE-71R was discontinued, it left this void in the 200 treadwear market. And everybody, and I'll just say everybody, saw the Potenza RE-71RS on the Japanese Bridgestone site. But it felt like this roller coaster, here's the new product, it's not coming to the US, and then maybe it's coming to the US, and now it is, but we're not sure when. Why don't you please just tell everybody the story of bringing this tire to the market so they can hear it straight from the source?
I always enjoy the TJ Talkings, but this is the one that I probably look forward to most once we realized that the RS was gonna come over to the US. When we were really in the final stages of bringing the product over, we did some additional testing for our market. And I'll say we were confused by the results. They weren't what we were expected. And we kind of pressed pause a little bit to get some more information. Because the last thing that we wanted to do is go from this legacy of the 71R to this new product that people would expect to have the same kind of performance and be disappointed. And so we did. We pushed paused. We actually extended the 71R life for about another year and a half. We did some additional testing, had some additional conversations with the development team in Japan. And we got additional confidence really to know that, no, this is the right product for this market. It will work in all different kinds of amateur motorsports competition. And I think based on the initial feedback, what we've seen, the testing that Tire Rack has done, we're confident now that this was the right product, and we're very excited to have it back in the lineup.
RE-71RS is, as you stated, a different product than Potenza RE-71R than its predecessor was. Will you tell us the goals, the performance targets for the new tire as compared to the old tire?
The 71RS versus the R is, if I think about kind of that blend of like autocross or in Japan, Gymkhana style driving versus track driving, it's a little bit more focused on the track portion of the driving. And the design, the compound, and really the testing that we've done is a little bit geared towards that. Now, that's not to say that the tires performs poorly at autocross. We've actually seen some evidence that it's a very strong contender for that. But we do feel that track environment is really where the product is going to shine, especially versus the predecessor.
We could feel some of that, in our testing. It performed very well in the dry. It didn't feel quite as sharp as what the predecessor did. But as far as the dry skid pad was concerned, it just had this huge lateral grip. 1.06 Gs is what we pulled in that tire around the skid pad. That is just a huge number. Can you tell us the compound on Potenza RE-71RS? Is it a crossover from some other product? Is it specially developed for RE-71RS? Is it an evolution, as they say, of Potenza RE-71R? What kind of info can you give us about that?
I'll step back and talk about the 71R. That tire was the result of, I hate to use the term kitchen sink, but we threw everything at that tire from a development standpoint. And so there was so much different things from a construction and compound standpoint in the 71R that it was very, very unique in our product lineup. The interesting thing about technology over time is you can get better performance without necessarily having to throw all of that at it. So the compound direction for the RS is actually a little bit different. It's not necessarily an evolution. It's a different approach and a different philosophy. And because of that, has some different characteristics to it. And I think, again, really focused on track, and track durability also is a big thing that was a focus of the product. So I think both the compound as well as the different pattern approach, so being asymmetric versus directional, really are all targeted towards that different performance that we were going at. And as a result, I think that it does have that really, really strong balance that the 71R had to use all these new kind of different technologies to achieve.
You mentioned directional versus asymmetric, and that was, kind of part of the focus of the new tire. Can you explain a little bit more of why an asymmetric pattern was chosen for the new product?
You make a choice between directionality and symmetry really to decide what your focus is going to be from a performance standpoint. So with directionality, you can tune the pattern for really strong longitudinal, so really braking traction and accelerating traction. If you look at an asymmetric pattern, you really have the opportunity to tune that outside shoulder rib to handle all of that lateral force, so all of that cornering force. And so a big part of the development was really to get more even contact pressure throughout the footprint as the tire corners, and provide really like lower individual contact pressure in that shoulder area. So avoiding hot spots that can either overheat the tire or on track especially can lead to wear. And the other benefit I think of the asymmetry that a lot of people don't think about initially, but once they get to the track especially is really nice, is it makes rotation side to side, corner to corner at a track actually a lot easier than directional. You could cross rotate. So if you have, a track that's heavy on the left-hand side, you can kind of balance the wear out yourself at the track using, hand tools and a jack. So it's definitely, at least for me, when I think about the track usage, it's a pretty big advantage for folks that might not have access to the tire mounting equipment.
Is the construction of RE-71RS asymmetric, or is it a symmetric construction?
So the construction itself is still symmetric. It's tuned though to utilize the asymmetric pattern. So if you think about how the tire kind of deflects and rolls in cornering, it's designed to make the most contact on that nice wide outside shoulder and to create that even pressure distribution. So there's not like an asymmetric cavity or asymmetric actual construction itself, but it is tuned to make sure that we're getting the most out of the pattern there.
Do you think it could be flipped later in life once somebody burns through the most of the inboard or the outboard shoulder?
We're not going to recommend that because it was designed to have a specific inside and outside. And again, that outside shoulder, and you can really see it on the pattern, is designed to take all of that cornering force.
There it is. The official word is don't flip them. All right, got it. Is the internal construction of the tire, is that something that is also more commonplace than what RE-71R was? Does it take a lot of motorsports cues, or it's something else that is more conventional?
So that's an interesting question. It's kind of a yes and no. The actual fabrics themselves for the body ply, the reinforcing cap ply, and then the belts are all new materials, and they're the result of an extra decade of R&D. The belt material especially, and how that remains compliant as the tire rolls over while still providing all the cornering force that's needed, is a really key component of some of these new materials that we've been developing. And so that's a big part of how we're able to use, I'll say, more conventional construction, but also continue to push the performance envelope in a tire like this.
So we talked a little bit about our dry testing results when we tested Potenza RE-71RS. What we haven't touched on is wet traction. We were blown away by the wet traction, and of course we're talking wet grip, not hydroplaning resistance. So let's just throw that out there right away. But as far as wet traction goes, Potenza RE-71RS is literally the best tire we've ever tested in the wet. Was that surprising? Was that intentional? Is that just a happy coincidence of this, the new compound? Tell me about the wet performance of the tire.
It was very intentional. We look at a lot of different, I'll say, like compound curves over temperatures, which can represent a different range of conditions. Cold temperatures, wet conditions, hot temperatures was to increase traction in all conditions to make the most balanced product possible. And there's the other component, which is increased silica, new technologies, new polymers, and then really new mixing techniques that have allowed us to incorporate more and more and more silica into tread compounds, still allowing them to be manufacturable than what we would have seen in the past decades. And that has really allowed us to push the envelope on wet performance while not really sacrificing in other areas. And so that's really, you could see that on this tire especially.
Potenza RE-71RS, our race team, my race team, we previously used Potenza RE-71R. And typically its fastest time of day was going to be on the first, 2-hour stint. And then, after that, it would settle in and be consistent, but it would be a little bit slower than it was right out of the box. Potenza RE-71RS, and now this is just, one data point, our anecdotal evidence. It's not the result of a long-term study, but we are finding that it continues to get faster and faster as it wears. Of course, as tread depth goes down, there's less squirm, less heat, that sort of thing. But you would think that by hour, 5 or 6 of an endurance race, it's heat soaked, it is, kind of beaten up a little bit. But literally in the first race that we did, it was, I think, the 5th from the last lap is when our fastest time of day came, when, it's at the wear bars or below. Do you have any idea why that is? Is that expected? I know consistency and durability in track use was a goal of the new tire, but can you give us any kind of explanation of the mechanics of why we're seeing that?
Sure. I think as far as I'll say like end of stint speed versus beginning of stint speed, how it kind of just stayed consistent and got progressively quicker. I think you mentioned it, the way that the tire wears, and especially with that large outside shoulder block, it basically becomes a slick towards the end of the tire's life. Relative to the 71R though, the one of the main goals of the RS was consistency. So 71R it was great for time trials because the first flying lap was just spectacular. The RS doesn't necessarily have that sharpness to it initially. It's still going to have the quickest lap you're going to do on the tire for like a TT in the first or second lap. But consistency was a huge goal, and so both the compound and the pattern were tuned to maybe not have that absolute like sharpest performance, but to stay consistent. There is this lack of like that really, really perfect precision that the R had, but there's a little bit more room for error. There's a little bit more room for, if you overdrive, it punishes you with a little bit less. And I think generally those couple of characteristics together are going to make the tire pretty strong for endurance racing.
As far as wear is concerned, our team has seen an improvement over RE-71R just as far as how much tire is left at the end of a race. That, of course, was a goal for Potenza RE-71RS. Is that something, and I know the tire is new to the market, but is that something that you're seeing kind of across the board? Are most customers getting more wear out of it than the predecessor?
I believe so. So there's the interesting thing about this segment, especially, is there's so many different usage conditions that what I'll say is I'll be very curious to see how it progresses from, pure street cars in an autocross type environment to full-on race cars in an endurance type environment. What I do know is that the goal of the tire was to be better for wear, for track use. We saw that both in development testing and in our testing, and I think that the testing that you guys have done on track has supported that. All the characteristics of the tire, from the compound to the way that the contact patch has less hot spots in it during cornering, it all should add up to that improved wear over time.
We're excited with our current test results, with our race results. We are going to do more tests with this tire in the future. We have a bigger track test planned, but thus far, it seems like a success. It seems like a winner. And Will, I know you were one of the people internally that really fought to bring Potenza RE-71RS to our market. So the whole enthusiast market owes you a debt of gratitude. So thank you very much. And of course, thank you for spending time with us on the show and talking about Potenza RE-71RS.
Yeah, absolutely. Really appreciate it. And we're very, very excited to be back in this game. It's just such a tremendously fun segment to actually be able to go and compete out there, and just really happy with the initial feedback on the product. And we're really looking forward to see what it can do.
Thank you very much for your time. It's always a pleasure, and we'll see you next time, I'm sure.
Great. Thanks, TJ.